Big Ben and the boys, Fagaga, 742. The Link, Pacific Points, Cabo Enterprises, ITN and Jack in the Box. Good morning, it's Monday. Back to school Monday. Whether you like it or not. September 27th, the Chief of Police, Stephen Ignacio, in the KUM News Zoom room. Good morning, Chief. Happy Monday.
Morning, Chris. Bree.
Good morning.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
Well, thanks for joining us, and I guess we'll go ahead and get right into it. There was a media report I saw that was talking about domestic violence response times, Chief. So did we kind of want to start there and maybe just respond to some of the criticisms that people have about just some of the response times that we get from the Guam Police Department? I know it's challenging.
Yeah. So, Chris, sometimes, the response time is dependent on the nature of the call and how many officers are on duty. But, domestic violence, though, by statute, the response time should be very minimal. And so we try and get to these calls right away, to these victims who had a bad experience with our response time. I truly do apologize. And I'll have Sergeant Tapao look into that matter, and we'll get a response into that specific incident.
What are some of the challenges that lead to these longer response times, Chief?
Of course, Chris, it goes down to lack of personnel. We're challenged with people, but we continue to respond to the calls. It may take a little bit longer, but we will get there. And for those, who experience a very long wait or actually call and don't get a police officer to come by, please call my office so that we can address it and, make sure that, we talk to the officers and their command to make sure that, there is a response, albeit delayed at times, but we will get there.
Chief, could you kind of explain the process? Because I know of some instances where people will call the police and I guess depending on what they're calling about, they might not even get a response at all. Like, for example, I mean, I'm not trying to make this personal because I'm so over it, but someone broke into my house a couple years back and they didn't take anything, but, and I didn't even want to call the cops because it was just, to me, it just seemed like a hassle, you know what I mean? Because I saw where they came in, I looked at everything over, and it just, was like, I realized, especially working in the media, that there are many more important cases, right? But that being said, I did call and, they said they were going to send someone out, but no one ever showed up. But I mean, I'm just thinking about, forget me, what about those people where it's, more important and they just get no response whatsoever? What's the protocol and how do you guys determine what calls warrant a response, given that you're always kind of dealing with this shortage in staff?
Yeah, Chris. So, our response, of course, is based on the priority of the call. Of course, in progress calls, the more serious calls, robberies, stabbings, of course, homicides, robberies with injuries, domestic violence, especially if the perpetrator is still at location. Those calls get a priority over, let's say a theft. There's no suspects. Like in your case, you came home, nothing was taken, and nobody was there. The perpetrator was not there anymore. We kind of push those down the line until the officers are free. It's not unusual, especially for like Derecho precinct. I mean, they'd have to call, the neighboring precincts like Tamuning or Central to come and help out because we could have. I've been up there before Derecho, and we could have 2 or 3 disturbance calls or riot calls at the same time. And so, of course, those are calls that we have to respond to because there's a high likelihood that maybe people might get hurt. We have to break up a fight. And so, we respond to those calls first. And then, of course, all the other calls are pending until we have enough, or until we get to them. And so, Chris, again, it's a matter of the call, the number of personnel on duty, and, making sure that even things like having cars, can be a challenge. And although I would like to say that shouldn't be a challenge anymore, we just released 23 brand new cars to our fleet last week. So, I don't believe cars should be an issue now.
I want to get to the cars in just a second, but I wanted to just follow up on just calls. And is there any discussion to kind of make it more efficient and move away from this 3-call transfer to 911? Because that kind of has a delay for about like 3 to 5 minutes. So currently, someone calls 911, determines if it's a GPD call, then 911 transfers it to GPD dispatch, and then determines what precinct is responsible. Then after that, GPD dispatch transfers caller to the specific precinct. So is there anything that you guys are discussing? We got to make this more efficient, more, responsive to people that need help?
Yeah, Bree. So the fire department is upgrading their 911 system, the next gen 911. So I believe in my discussions with the fire chief, we should be able to at least minimize the number of times a call is transferred. Ultimately, Bree, I'd like to go back to the days where there was a large number of dispatchers. We had dispatchers, actually even civilian dispatchers at the precincts. Those have kind of gone away, and those duties have now rested on the police officer. But if we can get more dispatchers, and we have hired dispatchers. Fortunately, just like police officers, they quit also. But if we can minimize, like you said, Bree, the number of times a call is transferred, and the number of times really a person has to repeat themselves, it saves a lot of time and really a lot of frustration on the part of the victims. Because I understand the frustration. You call 911, you have to explain yourself. They make a determination it's a police call. They send you to police dispatch. Oh, you're from Dededo, so we're going to send you to Dededo. And then Dededo has to ask you again all over. And I think if we can figure out where we take out the middleman and just use one form of dispatch, I think we can minimize the frustration on the part of the victim, and making sure that we get to the call faster or sooner rather than later. One of the things we've talked about, but we don't want to minimize anybody's complaint. Chris and Bree, is we've talked as a department, what can we do to like these calls that no suspects, maybe just unfortunately maybe just clothing or slippers were stolen, or a bush cutter or lawnmower, and there's no suspects, no leads, or a very minimal amount of money involved as far as the value of the item. We've talked about maybe even having them come to the precinct, file a report, something that we've explored. Major Manny has talked to some of our records management, our vendor for our records management system. We're looking at ways to, and we've talked about this many times in the past, even when I was a captain. How can we minimize the wait, and is there a better way to take complaints as opposed to sending an officer or having somebody come in person? But until we get there, every call is important, and we do our best to try and get to these calls.
Now on to the cars. You said 23 new cars. Is one missing?
Yeah, one's missing. It's on its way. Yeah, we have 23 of 24, but it's definitely ordered and it's on its way. These cars took a long time to get here. There was production issues, and I think we follow what's going on throughout the nation. There was a delay in production of vehicles. A lot of it had to do with, I guess, computer chips or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And so we're affected just as well as the rest of the community.
Any of the new cars experience any issues or problems?
I think one did have a stall issue, but of course, these cars are brand new, so they have a warranty on them, and so of course it's going to be addressed by the dealer.
Mm-hmm. What about more cars? Are you guys ordering more cars?
Yes, we're already looking into funding. We're talking to. We're going to have a discussion again with Mr. Esther Carlson and his team and see if there's a Department of Interior funding with the governor, lieutenant governor, of course. There's always hopefully there's ARP funding. That's something that we can discuss with the governor. But we're gonna have to start from scratch again. The indefinite quantity bid for this particular lot of cars has expired already, so we're gonna have to start the whole process again. To build the specs, and then get a vehicle committee together to make recommendations.
How many cars you guys looking to get?
It'd be nice, Bree, of course, in a perfect world, to have a two-fleet system. And what that means is that when one fleet is out on the road, 3 months from now, or when you hit the 6,000 mile mark, you can take the first fleet offline, put the second fleet out, and what that does is it allows for rest for the first fleet. So it's kind of a rotation system. And I worked at Highway Patrol, and I'll tell you, the cars up there last longer because the officers are off, and so when the officers are off, the cars are off, and the cars take a break. They have a rest period, and so there's not much wear and tear. I suppose to our patrol officers, these cars are driven 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and of course that takes its toll on the cars.
Did you have any response to some of the issues in the legislation that was introduced by Senator James Moylan regarding concerns he had about executive security?
No, I just recently was informed of that bill, and we're preparing a response. The executive security section is a part of the Guam Police Department. So their salaries and benefits are already folded into the overall Guam Police Department budget.
Right, but I think he was kind of talking about how executive security increased basically during the pandemic when people were supposed to be home.
Yes, Bree, I know that's a concern, but let me tell you, executive security is not the only place where there's increase in overtime throughout the department. I mean, I am using patrol officers on their day off to work at the isolation and quarantine facilities. So across the board, and it's not just the Guam Police Department. I mean, I participate, and I've talked to other directors. We've all incurred overtime costs. We've all incurred a lot of personnel costs during this pandemic from March of last year to present. And so this is not just unique to the Guam Police Department. We've spent a lot of overtime in our response to this pandemic, whether it's patrolling the parks and beaches, making sure that there's no large social gatherings. There's a lot of things that we've done in the past that people may have forgotten already. We've had the grab and go lunches. We've had the testing at Northern Public Health, Southern Public Health. So we've had to deal with these large crowds. Okudu testing. We've been in this fight for over a year, and we've incurred costs across the Guam Police Department. And this is true for Customs and Quarantine. They were helping me out. Parks and Recs, conservation officers. They've all been there by our side. Part of the public safety response.
Chief, I think maybe one of the points you can address is with this information that Senator Moylan's coming out with, people just kind of want to know that is the $2 million we're spending on executive security hampering the department's ability to protect, the regular people out in the streets? That's kind of what I think people want to know most of all.
No, Chris, that money that was spent again is because of their pandemic response, and they were not just protecting the governor, lieutenant governor, and whatever duties they had, but they were also part of our other responses. Like I said before, they were responsible for the Parks and Beach Task Force when we had to shut down the parks and beaches, make sure that there were no large gatherings. So they've been there and they've been part of that fight as well as everybody else. Yeah.
What's the update on your vaccination status?
I believe I'm actually over 70% overall. That's uniform and civilians. I think I'm at probably about 72%. So it went up a little bit. I was at 67 a couple weeks ago. Just working like every other director, trying to convince our employees that getting vaccinated a good thing. But those that are doubtful or don't wish, we respect that as well. But we do have our plans in place, to comply with the executive order. Honestly, I encourage them to get vaccinated. I'm vaccinated myself. It's allowed me actually, to go in and dine at the restaurants and show my card and everything. But it's a minor inconvenience, for the greater good of the community. That I'm vaccinated and everybody else is, and I encourage my officers and my civilians, to consider getting vaccinated. So, but in line with that though, we do have our testing, and I know today starts the first day of mandatory testing. So that's something that I'll be discussing with my staff again today, or kind of a reminder. Here's the requirements, and here's what you need to do. Sorry, let me just get that.
Yeah. I wonder how many staff that is. Because what do they? I think was it Crystal who came out Friday and said there was 400 executive branch employees who have yet to be vaccinated. Chief, how many people are we talking about? If 70% of the department is vaxxed, how many are unvaxxed?
So that leaves you at about, I think, 80 to 90 people that are not vaccinated, civilians and uniform included.
And then what's the testing protocol? Do they just got to go line up at TZEN, or do you guys have test kits at the department level?
No, there was a circular.
No, actually, we do our own testing, Chris. So, we've actually been doing our own testing for quite some time already. We're probably one of the first government agencies to administer tests. And that was born out of necessity. We were dealing with, of course, people under arrest. And there was an outbreak of COVID at DOC. So we had to come up with a mechanism to make sure that, before we put people up at DOC, that they were tested. And so that's how our test site came to be.
The budget bill, it's now law, and there's a provision in there regarding training, and we can get to that.
Yeah, we're gonna jump over to the KUAM TV side, guys, on the breeze. We're KUAM FM and Agotni, Guam. But let's go over to KUAM TV on this Monday morning. Again, this is the link brought to you proudly by Pacific Points, IT&E, Calvo Enterprises, and Jack in the Box. And we're back. It's 8 o'clock. Chris, Jason, Sabrina in progress now with the Chief of Police, Chief Stephen Ignacio. Sabrina?
As I was mentioning, the budget bill, which lapsed into law, there's a provision in there regarding requiring annual training for several of the law enforcement agencies. And so I was just wondering, when is GPD's next police training schedule?
So in a couple of weeks, we'll be starting the next police cycle. This is that small group that I talked about. There's only 6, but it's we had it done that way because we're combining with airport police, port police, and I think DYA and DOC. I know DOC for sure. I'm not sure about DYA yet. But yeah, we're starting, I think, on October 12th, somewhere around the mid part of October. So we're ready to start. It's a small cycle, but Bree and Jace, Chris, in that process, though, we're already starting the background investigations for the next batch, and that's about 20 officers. So, we're continuing to hire and we're continuing to fill positions. I'd like to encourage, though, people that, we're talking about people that are unemployed, they've lost their jobs, they work in the tourism industry and whatever, or those related industries. PUA has ended. And I encourage people, we still have our continuous job announcement. So that means you can come in and apply to become a police officer. So I encourage people to come in and apply, to join the Guam Police Department.
One thing we have been talking about a lot on the show with you, and I wanted to actually follow up with you, is the DNA lab. I think it's set to open in October. We're a couple days away from October. Is that still on track?
I believe so. That's a project under the Guam Community College. So if anything, I'll defer to them. I do know that for the equipment, the collateral equipment that comes with that we need for the lab, that's already, I think, put out for bid. We went with GCC. We provided the funding to them, and we worked with them as their procuring agency to get the equipment. So I know the bid was put out a couple weeks ago, and hopefully we have enough vendors out there, interested vendors or qualified vendors to get us that DNA equipment. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. That's almost, I think, close to $1 million worth of equipment that we budgeted for.
What about staffing for that lab? And do you guys have experienced and trained?
Again, that's
personnel?
something that we're working on with the DOA. We need to hire a couple more criminalists, but we've been having discussions already with the forensic science division personnel, and there is a plan in place. It's just a matter of hiring these criminalists, bring them on, so that we can start the training.
Okay.
Oh, Chief, I wanted to recognize one of my friends who just completed, I want to say it was 30 years as a civilian volunteer police reservist, Pete Wolford.
Yes, yeah, Mr. Pete Wolford. Yeah, many years for the Guam Police Department Reserve. I don't even remember when he started, but I'll tell you, Mr. Wolford was here for a very long time, and he finally hung up his hat. But kudos to him. I hope I want him to enjoy his retirement, and I think we should be looking forward to that. Good guy.
Is that a program? How do people, if they want to get involved with this civilian volunteer police reserve program, Chief?
Yeah, so we tried to get a police reserve training academy started. We were targeting actually those that were graduated from at least the Criminal Justice Academy at the Guam Community College. And so, we had a list of applicants, but, by the time we filtered it down, there was only about 6 that met that qualification. The thing is, a police reserve under the post-commission law has to meet the same requirements as a police officer 1. And so that means that they have to have all the same training and all the same courses as a police officer in a regular academy. And so that's the challenge that we have, so we can't just take them off the street and put them in a uniform and say, raise your right hand because now you're a police reserve. Those days are gone. They have to meet the qualifications of a PO1 under the post law. And so that means, we have to send them to training,
Speaking of the post, do you know, has anyone been hired as the executive director yet?
No, we still have an interim executive director, Mr. Bob Camacho. I just met with the incoming or the new post-commission chair, Chief Vince Perez, over the weekend. My condolences again to Dr. Fee and his family, Julie, and then the kids. I'm sorry, their children. We had the memorial service for Dr. Fee over the weekend. And, I did talk to Vince at the memorial. I said, we'd like to get the post-commission meeting so that we can discuss, getting that executive director and the support staff and kind of moving things along, following the vision of Dr. Fee, which I think is a very good vision moving forward for the post-commission.
And that vision, or at least part of that vision that I can recall, because he did that study and that assessment regarding parity, right? And especially pointing out how sad it is that GPD is getting paid, pennies compared to some of their law enforcement counterparts.
I mean, even within the government of Guam.
Right. Yeah, so I believe that provision did make it into the budget law, and so I'd have to look up that provision in the budget law, but I believe it was included in this year's budget law, where the post commission has X amount of days to come up with a recommendation for pay for law enforcement.
Well, hopefully,
Well, yeah, I did tell, I did tell Chief Perez, it'd be nice if the post commission could have a meeting sometime soon, at least to discuss those two key issues.
Well, what do you think, Chief? What do you think is a good like entry level pay for starting a police officer?
You know, Chris, if we're to follow where they're leading us to, which is the federal government, we're looking at about $16 to $17 an hour starting, and that's where they're leading us to. You know, the Navy, police, Customs and Border Protection. That's where their starting pay is at, and that's just for salary.
Right.
That doesn't include benefits, and I'll tell you. We did an exit interview of some of the officers who left recently, and one of the things that they pointed out is that I'm leaving you is because not because of your salary, but because your retirement plan. How long do I have to work for you before I actually retire? The government of Guam's retirement plan is no longer attractive, and then that's the God's honest truth. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's the truth. The retirement plan is not attractive anymore. These people want to work, but they also want to retire, and so they're going to look for good retirement plans where they don't they're comfortable when they retire. They actually have a plan, and that's one of the reasons why some of them have left also.
So are you aware, has there been any movement on that bill by the oversight chair? I think he introduced something that was related to addressing retirement for law enforcement officers.
Yes, I believe that provision also made it
It's
into
included?
this budget law.
Okay.
Yeah, it was included as well.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see what the study comes out with from the retirement plan or the retirement fund. But that's another issue, that people talk about, is the government of Guam retirement plan. And it's not just the retirement plan for the police, but it's government wide,
Yeah, yep. The same my grandpa's retirement plan, that's for sure.
Right. And I really just had one final question, and this was related
Sure.
to the ships that were here, the British Royal Navy. I know there was a lot of meetings when they arrived to be, I guess, it seemed to be more proactive, right? Well, they left yesterday, from what I understand. How did all of that go? Were there any citations or anything that were issued, or did they pretty much comply and were well behaved?
I didn't get any reports of any major issues like the last visit. And I think what it is that I think there was lessons learned from the last visit, and that we had a better plan for this visit this time. And so I haven't had any reports of any major incidents. I have my staff look into what we actually encountered, and we can talk about that the next time. But I don't have any major issues like the last visit. And I think, like I said, they had a shore patrol. They had good contact numbers. We had contacts, phone numbers for each and every ship. There was 4 ships visiting, and so I think, like I said, overall it was a better visit and a smoother visit this time.
Right. Well, kudos. I mean, you guys really kind of put them on notice. Like, hey, we're going to put up with the crap that happened last time. We want, shore patrol, and we want this and that. So, good job in that regard.
It's just a matter of working with people. It was only their second visit to Guam. I think the first time it was new for everybody, and so there were lessons learned. But I mean, overall, I think it's nice to welcome these foreign ships to our island, and I think our economy could use it as well. And it's nice to meet and greet other people from other parts of the world. It broadens our horizon.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chief. Did you have
Okay, have a good morning.
You too,
Take care.
Chief. Right on.
Take care.
There you go, Chief Ignacio, Guam Police Department. Well, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back with our 8 o'clock newscast right here on the link.
Uno Mixed. We're mixing it up on the last Thursday of every month with a look at lifestyle, entertainment, food, and so much more on the stations, networks, and digital